So the recorder is on. Okay. So finishing up with a modest proposal. By the way, I thought of this after your class yesterday. A great example of Juvenalian satire. Does anybody remember Invader Zim? Yes? Okay. That's a pretty good example of Juvenalian satire that I thought of in my last class. Anyway, so just to give you a pop culture reference for that. Okay, so we left off talking about the title of a modest proposal, and I said one of the best ways that we can approach this is actually through looking at its rhetorical situation. So, what I want to start us off with a little bit is just talking about who the narrator is and who our author is. And let's consider who they're talking to.
Are you trying to turn me on?
All right. So who is it? Okay. So, first up, what do we know about our author? This one?
Alexander.
Okay. So, our author is Swift himself. And what are a few things that may be relevant to our knowledge of who Swift is?
Beautiful Taylor.
He writes epic or mocks, something.
Okay, so he likes to write, so he is a satirist, sometimes writes mock epic, sometimes writes other things as well. Okay, what else? What else do we know about Mr. Swift? Intricate writing styles. Okay, thank you, JD. Anything else?
That was very well.
Sophia?
Wasn't he jealous of Polysiva?
That's Alexander Pope. Alright, sorry. Yeah, I know it's confusing. We talked about Swift, then we talked about Pope, then we talked about Pope some more, and now we're talking about Swift again. Alright, so he's a satirist. What do we remember? What country is he originally from?
Ireland.
Ireland. So if he's Irish. So he's Irish by birth, but where did he spend a lot of time?
England.
All right. So. All right, so Irish by birth, lived in England for some time. What religion was he? He ended up being the dean of St. Patrick's Cathedral, which is actually a Protestant cathedral. But Swift doesn't seem to really care about the difference between Catholicism and Protestantism, and switches back and forth as it is convenient to him. So he is technically Protestant, but he ends up, he doesn't really care that much. Okay, so we've got that. Okay, who else do I have some XP for this? Everybody. People, all kinds of people.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Give me that.
So we've got that going on. What about Swift's narrator? Is Swift's narrator the same as? Are these two people the same? No? Why not? Okay, you don't think that Swift really thinks that this is a good option. We don't think that Swift is probably actually advocating this. Yeah. So when we talk about narrators, we need to realize that they are a constructed persona.
What are you doing?
that is a character. And a lot of the time when we're reading something, our narrator is pretty close to who the author is. There's a very short dramatic distance that exists between them. But other times you see an increase in that dramatic distance. And a lot of that depends on what the genre is. A lot of that depends on what the author is trying to do. And sometimes it just depends on how involved the narrator is. So, for example, a series of unfortunate events. Who's that actually written by? Nope. It's not the author's name.
Alexander Pope.
Huh? His brother. Can you guys look it up for me? Who wrote a series of unfortunate events?
I got you.
Who it is?
Oh, come on.
Daniel Handler.
Daniel Handler? Okay.
No. No, Patrick Harris.
Wait.
Oh, wait, no, he played Count.
Alright. Daniel Handler. Best known for his children's series, a series of unfortunate events. Good. Alright, yeah. So, Daniel Handler is the actual author, but who is the narrator who's telling us everything that's happening in the story? Lemony Snicket.
That's 2 years.
So, that's confusing, yes it is, but Lemony Snicket is a character in the book just as much as the children that are actually in the story. Does that make a certain amount of sense? Okay. So Swift's narrator is different from Swift the author. Can we tell anything about Swift's narrator? Is there anything we learn about him specifically? He's a boss.
He's kind of boring. He just like
Huh?
he's like straight up and kind of boring about everything.
Straight up, kind of boring, okay.
I want to be
Blunt.
blunt.
Like blunt.
Blunt, okay.
Stop talking.
Alright, so what else we got? Is that it? That's okay. We might fill in more as we go. So, genre, audience, purpose, and stance.
And I gave up dessert.
Can I eat it for you?
You gave up dessert.
So, looking at this, genre, audience, purpose, and stance. What did I say all of these things together are? What do we call that?
Yeah.
Okay, gaps, yeah. We gotta fill in the gaps with, starts with an R. It was something I said that I discussed in my Comp 1 class. Victoria, I can't tell if you're right.
No, not right.
Okay. Does the phrase rhetorical situation ring a bell? No? I thought we went over this yesterday. Oh well, alright. So this is genre, audience, purpose, and stance are the things that we look at when we're talking about rhetorical situation. So, looking at Swift's narrator, what's his genre? Fiction. Swift's narrator. Does Swift's narrator see this as fiction? No?
Real life.
Real life. Real life? Yeah. He's talking about a real life event, and is he giving a serious proposal? Yeah. So what is his genre? What is he writing? Nonfiction. He is writing more specifically, because nonfiction is really broad. He's writing what? A proposal. He's giving us a proposal. And he's pretty darn serious about it. Now, who's his audience? Who is he addressing?
The rich.
The rich?
I think it applies to everyone because like it affects everyone.
Okay, it applies to everyone, so it affects everybody, but is that who he's talking to?
Is he talking to like the poor people in Ireland?
Is he talking to poor people in Ireland?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Are they the ones he's addressing, though? I don't know. Let's take a look. Okay. So, poor people in Ireland, we'll see. All right. Can I have a volunteer to read the first paragraph really briefly. Gabe, go for it.
It is a melancholy object to those who walk through this great town or travel in the country. When they see the streets, the roads, and cabin doors crowded with beggars of the female sex, followed by 3, 4, 6 children, all in rags and importuning every passenger for an alms. These mothers, instead of being able to work for their honest livelihood, are forced to employ all their time strolling to beg sustenance for their helpless infants who, as they grow up, either turn thieves for want of work or leave their dear native country to fight for the pretender in Spain, or sell themselves to Barbados.
Okay, so looking at this, based on how he's talking about these beggars in Ireland, do you think he's talking about the Irish poor? Yes? How would you say, if you were talking to somebody who was in that situation, would you address them like, it is a melancholy object to those who walk this great town, when they see the streets, roads, and cabin doors crowded with beggars of the female sex? Would you address those beggars like that? No. So I don't think these are the Irish poor. Who else could it be?
Merchants.
Merchants. Okay. What class? What social class do we think? Middle?
Upper.
Upper?
Up.
Middle or upper, perhaps. Okay. Is he talking to people who are lower class? Is he talking to the poor? The narrator, to be specific. I don't think so. Because if you were talking to the poor, I don't think he would address them in this detached a fashion. Because he's talking to them as though he's talking about them as though they are objects.
Could it be indentured servants?
I really don't think he's talking to indentured servants. He's talking about them, but that doesn't mean that's who he is talking to. Do you see the difference?
Yes.
One of them is the object, one of them is what he's talking about, but the people he's talking to are something else. And we actually get a lot of great hints in this first stanza, in this first paragraph about it. So he talks about these mothers who are begging because they have all these children and they have to beg for food for their infants, so they can't work. And what does he say of what's going to happen to the children? What are the 3 things he says the children are going to do? They're going to turn into thieves because they can't find work.
They're gonna fight.
They're going to go fight for who? For the
Catholic.
There's something very specific that he says here.
They're
Fight
gonna
for
leave.
the pretender in Spain, or they're gonna
Head out.
Sell themselves.
sell themselves to the Barbados.
So does that mean they're gonna go work as indentured servants?
All right, let's break this down.
Well, French are in Barbados.
Let's break this down real fast. So, turn thieves for want of work. Who's got the most to lose in Ireland if all of these children of beggars turn into thieves?
Ireland.
The rich. The rich are the ones who are going to lose, because do you steal from poor people? Is there anything worth it stealing from poor people? No. So who would be concerned by that? The rich people. So we can tell that they're rich. And they're afraid of these people leaving in order to fight for the pretender in Spain. Who can tell me, who's the pretender in Spain? Gracie. James Stewart and his descendants. Because was James Stewart killed in the Glorious Revolution?
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
No.
he lost the throne.
He lost the throne, but does that mean he died?
No.
No, he didn't die. He ran away. And so where did he go to since he was Catholic and he got kicked off his throne for his Catholic sympathies? He went to Spain. And so he and his descendants, his other descendants who didn't overthrow him, have been hiding out in Spain. And who, of course, is going to claim that they are the rightful kings of England? Those descendants. They're the pretenders to the crown. They've been kicked out of the line of succession, but they are going to maintain that they are the ones who should be sitting on the throne. So, with that in mind, who would be concerned about the pretender in Spain coming back and taking over England? What groups of people? The Protestants, because the pretender to the throne, what religion would they support? Catholicism. Okay, so rich. So the people he's addressing are rich. They're Protestant. All right. What else? Are they people who are going to spend time in Ireland, or are they maybe people who are living in England?
England.
They're English. He's most concerned about the English. Because one of the things that's happening during this time period, well, I'll come back to that in a second. And of course, Kendall selling themselves to the Barbados. What is this referring to the practice of? Indentured servitude. Okay? We've got, during this time period, a number of Irish people. And by a number, I mean a very large number of the Irish are leaving Ireland and fleeing to go to the New World as indentured servants because they feel they have a better chance at getting a job and having a good life if they do that. So, with that in mind, yeah. There's more nuance to it than that. There's a lot more nuance to it than that. But I'm going to digress if I go off on that. So, so he's concerned, he's talking to people who are concerned about this. And they're concerned about this also because if all of these Irish people leave Ireland, what does that mean for Ireland?
There's no power, like, they have no civilization.
They have no civilization.
There's gonna be no Ireland.
There's gonna be no Ireland.
It's not gonna be the same.
It's not gonna be the same.
Less people for them to rule over.
Less people for them to rule over, but less people also to work for them. These rich Protestant Englishmen that he's talking to are the English people who bought up all the land in Ireland. There are a lot of different events that go into this, but long story short, because of different things that the monarchy does, and because of different restrictions that are placed on Catholics throughout both the Kingdom of England and Ireland, because of those different restrictions, most of the Irish who used to own property in Ireland no longer do. And it gets bought up by these wealthy English landowners. And a big cause of the problem, the reason that you have so many poor in Ireland, is because how much do they charge them in rent? This is your ancestral farm.
Nothing.
Your family has lived on this ancestral farm for generations, but because of restrictions on Catholics being able to inherit property, in other words, they can't. And of course, what religion is Ireland? Catholic, for the most part. So, given that you can't inherit that property, what happens when your dad dies?
Foreclosed.
No. You can't inherit property. Your brother can't inherit property.
Just foreclosed.
It gets foreclosed on. It gets bought up by a wealthy English landowner who comes back and says, hey, you can stay on your family's property if you work the land and pay me rent. How much are you going to charge? How much is he going to charge you in rent? A lot. It's perhaps not going to be more than you make. It's perhaps going to be 90% of that. And do farms run on a pretty tight budget as it is? Well, yeah. So if you get one bad year, one bad crop, what happens to your livelihood? Crash, burn. well, that was a housing crash. So he's addressing the people who bought up all of this property and who have basically created this problem in Ireland. So of course he's gonna go on, and there are a couple of other things that I want to point out about these people. I think it is agreed by all parties that this prodigious number of children in the arms or on the backs or at the heels of their mothers and frequently of their fathers is in the present deplorable state of the kingdom a very great additional grievance. Therefore, whoever could find out a fair, cheap, and easy method of making these children sound and useful members of the Commonwealth would deserve so well of the public as to have his statue set up for a preserver of the nation. Who's going to have a statue set up? This guy. Right? He's just like puffing himself up right here and going on and on about this. So what is his purpose?
To provide an alternative saying, hey, if we do what I'm gonna say next, I'm gonna save you all.
Okay, so to propose a solution, Kendall?
I was gonna say to give him more power.
Oh, to give him more power? Yeah, eventually. Alright, so his purpose is to propose a solution. That is the reason that he is addressing them at this point. So, moving on from there. And he keeps going on about how many people this is going to help. My intention is very far from being confined only for the children of professed beggars. It is of much greater extent and shall take in the whole number of infants at a certain age who are born of parents in effect as little able to support them as those who demand our charity in the street. Now, can I have a volunteer to read this next paragraph, not stanza, top paragraph, as to my own part? Rachel.
As to my own part, having turned my thoughts for many years upon this important subject and maturely weighed the several schemes of our projectors, I have always found them grossly mistaken in their computation. It is true, a child just dropped it from its dam may be supported by her milk for a sole year with little other nourishment, at most not above the value of 2 shillings, which the mother may certainly get, or the value in scraps by her lawful occupation of begging. And it is exactly at 1 year old that I propose to provide for them in such a manner as, instead of being a charge upon their parents or the parish or wanting food and raiment for the rest of their lives, they shall, on the contrary, contribute to the feeding and partly to the clothing of many thousands.
Okay. So in this, he starts to get into his plan and the benefits of his plan. So he says that this will provide for children over a year of age, that mothers aren't going to need to spend that much on them, and that it's going to address all of these other social ills down here that he talks about, including abortion and infanticide and even abuse of husbands abusing their wives. So, what I want to point out, though, is his use of language. Rachel, was there, as you were reading this, is there anything that stands out in this as being a little off to you?
I thought there was one word that I thought, dropped was weird. I mean,
dropped? Yeah.
It was PT instead of like.
Yeah. But, so a child just dropped from its dam. What's that referring to?
Dropped from his home.
Giving birth. So a child that's just been born. Do we ever say that the child has just been dropped? No. What? No? That's kind of grotesque there, right?
What did I say?
And the word dam, D-A-M. Can you guys go ahead and look that up for me? The word dam.
It's a beaver dam.
No, like
it's a home.
Blocks.
No, not
we're talking about
that.
Rubber sheet used to keep saliva from teeth. Is that not it?
No, not that one.
Dam is constructed to hold back water and raise its level.
Not that one.
What? What type of dam are we talking about?
Let's take a look. Let's see if I can find it.
Damn it.
Stop filming.
Oh.
All right.
Oh, the female parent. Yeah.
What?
Female parents of an animal, especially a domestic mammal.
The female parent of a mammal, or the female parent of an animal, especially a domestic mammal. So when we say the word dam, and you start thinking of different creatures that could apply to, usually the kinds of things that we're thinking of. What are domestic mammals? A dog.
A cat.
A cat, maybe, but usually it's dealing more with
Horses.
livestock.
Horses.
Okay, so horses,
Cows.
what else? Cows,
Ox.
pigs. What do they have a lot of in Ireland?
Potatoes.
Goats. Alright. Is this a term that you would apply to a human mother?
No.
Potato.
Not generally. So what we see here, one of the things that our narrator takes great pains to do is to dehumanize the Irish. This is just the first example that we can see here, that he's specifically referring to them with dehumanizing language. That is language that makes them less than human. Rachel.
So I know it's like common in history to see like women and children kind of grouped together on like a different level, I guess. Would that have anything to do with it? Because it's
No, because it's not necessarily the case. Just because women are treated as lower class citizens, they're not usually referred to in animalistic terms.
oh, okay.
This is outright dehumanizing.
Yes.
And what is it that usually follows dehumanizing language?
Oh, genocide.
Genocide. Not an exaggeration. And I know we've talked about genocide before in this class, but we're talking about something a little bit different here. Okay. So here, Swift starts getting into it, and by Swift I mean Swift's narrator starts getting into the calculations of all of this. The number of souls in this kingdom being usually reckoned 1.5 million. Of these, I calculate there may be about 200,000 couple whose wives are breeders. Do we usually refer to people as breeders?
No.
Yeah.
From which number I subtract 30,000 couple who are able to maintain their own children. So how many couples does he think in all of Ireland, out of this 1 million people, who can sufficiently provide for their children?
30,000.
30,000. Isn't that number distressing?
Yes.
A little bit. Although I apprehend there cannot be so many under the present distresses of the kingdom. And he did so here he's saying even that number is too generous. But this being granted, there will remain 170,000 breeders. I subtract 50,000 for those women who miscarry and whose children die by accident or disease within the year. There only remain 120,000 children of poor parents annually born. The question, therefore, is how shall this number be reared and provided for, which, as I have already said, under the present situation of affairs, is utterly impossible by methods hitherto proposed. For we can neither employ them in handicraft nor agriculture. And he goes on explaining why these children can't be useful in any particular way under present circumstances. Like you can't even sell them as slaves because you wouldn't get enough money for them because they take too much to deal with raising them. So instead, he moves on to his proposal. Can I have a volunteer to read these next two paragraphs? They're very distressing paragraphs. Andrew?
I have been very assured by a very known American of my acquaintance in London that a young, healthy child, well nursed, is, at a year old, a most delicious, nourishing, and wholesome food, whether stewed, roast, baked, or boiled. And I make no doubt that it will equally serve in
A fricassee.
a fricassee or a ragus.
A ragoose.
A ragoose.
All right.
Wait, is he eating kids? What the heck?
All right. This is why I should have done a read check.
I mean, I didn't know if there was a 101 meeting.
All right. So I have been assured by a very knowing American. Couple things to note about this. First, who does he push this off on? Is this his idea?
American's idea.
No, it's an American's idea. Okay, we got to push it off onto those Americans. Why? What do people think of Americans during this time period? Sophia?
They're savages.
They're savages. Oh yes, let's ignore the fact that these are former Englishmen as well.
Savages.
They are savages because they've gone over to the Americas, and God knows what happens over there. Right? They've gone native. Ugh.
Witch trials.
Yep. And so he pushes it off on the American acquaintance. But this is his proposal, Mike. And he's never partaken of this, of course. No. But he's gonna tell you how wonderful this would be to take a baby and to cook it.
What?
Huh?
It would not be fun at all.
Would not be fun at all.
Would not be delicious.
The heck?
Would not be delicious or nourishing. I don't know. Like, could sustain you. I did once have a philosophy professor inform me that apparently humans taste like pork.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I assume that he heard it from somebody else. I hope he heard that from somebody else. Although I did have to look this up for a project at a certain point in my forensic chemistry class. Apparently humans have about the same nutritional value as pork as well. So have fun with that.
Pork is pork.
That's why they like another reason they like compare organs.
Yeah. Nope, there are a lot of reasons for that. That's one of them.
I think we're like
So he continues on. Now, mind you, he continues on with his computations because what he's trying to do here is build a logical appeal. Did you guys in your class ever talk about the 3 rhetorical appeals? Logos, pathos, ethos?
Yes.
Okay.
This is ethos.
No, this is logos. He's starting to build his logical appeal by going through all of these numbers. Now, I will tell you, 90% of these numbers, 96% of statistics are made up on the spot. That applies here. The number of people in Ireland in total is actually somewhat accurate at the time, but all of the rest of this is just crap. Just a heads up on that. He's making them up on the spot.
This one as well.
So, I do therefore humbly offer it to public consideration that of 120,000 children already computed, 20,000 may be reserved for breed, whereof only 1/4 part to be males, which is more than we allow to sheep, black cattle, or swine, and my reason is that these children are seldom the fruits of marriage, a circumstance not much regarded by our savages. Therefore, one male will be sufficient to serve 4 females. You want to talk about dehumanizing language? What is he proposing?
To serve kids to females.
No, he's gonna breed them, basically, like they do animals.
Okay, yeah. He's going to set up a breeding program for them, where you're only going to keep around one out of every 4 is going to be male, the rest will be female. So what's going to happen to all the male babies? They're going to get eaten. Yeah. Sorry, dudes. All right. So that's horrific enough. And then, of course, what's going to happen to the rest? The remaining 100,000 may, at a year old, be offered in sale to persons of quality and fortune through the kingdom, always advising the mother to let them suck plentifully in the last month, so as to render them plump and fat for a good table. Because women don't have any attachment to their children or anything like that, right? Victoria, what was that?
Basically, they're gonna split one kid up into 2 plates, so that 2 people can get from the same kid.
Well, no. One child can make 2 dishes at an entertainment for friends.
Wait,
So you have your friends over, and you take half the child and turn them into dinner. Yes.
So they're just like having kids and then eating them?
Huh? Except he's not suggesting this for the hoi polloi, the common people of Ireland. No. These are people of quality and fortune. Who are people of quality and fortune?
Americans.
People of quality and fortune. Huh.
America.
So these are the people that created the situation to begin with. These are the people he is proposing should eat the children, right? So Swift goes on for a great deal of time describing in horrific detail how it is that you could use these children. He goes on about, you know, different ways to, how this is going to be in season all year, except 9 months after Lent, because, you know, fish is supposed to increase fertility, da-da-da-da-da. Then we'll have, like, then it'll really be in season. We'll have a huge supply of it. And he goes on different ways that you could prepare the child, different ways that you could use the child. Like, talk about having, like, actual kid skin gloves, right?
What? Like our
Kid skin, like, usually kid skin is referring to leather made out of baby goats.
No.
Or calf skin. This, on the other hand, would be referring to, making it out of actual children, human children. And he goes on about all these different possible solutions, or all these different, what's the word I'm looking for? All these different ways that you could do this and reasons that it's beneficial. And he says, therefore I repeat, let no man talk to me of these and like expedients. So he gives this very long list of other things that have been proposed, and says, let no man talk to me of these other expedients, but as to myself, having been wearied, da-da-da-da-da, I fortunately fell upon this proposal, and he says that this proposal could only work in Ireland, because Ireland is the only place in the world desperate enough to need this as a solution. And of course reminds us one more time of having himself set up with a statue, probably in Trafalgar Square, because the War of 1812 hasn't happened yet. Anyway, and he has no personal interest in it because he has no children, and his wife is past childbearing. Gabby.
So, like, when people read this at the time, do they think this guy is mentally stable?
That's a good question. Because on the one hand, it's a joke on these people here, the rich Protestant English landowners, because they're the ones that started this situation. They're the ones who have destroyed Ireland at this point. And they're the ones he's saying should be eating these babies. So on the one hand, should we think that the narrator is mentally stable? No. Swift, though. Let's take a look at Swift. So, of course, propose a solution, eat the babies, is his stance. Is this clear? Do we have any questions, any thoughts on this? Yep. The stance is to eat the babies to solve Ireland's problems.
If anyone saw my notes, they'd be like...
Yeah, or they realized you were talking about Monster Puzzle. So, author. Swift the author. What genre is Swift the author working in? Satire. What kind of satire, Gracie? Juvenalian. This is very much Juvenalian satire. Because what is Swift saying? What is Swift saying about these wealthy English Protestant landowners? Are they awful enough people that they would do this?
Yes.
That's the implication. That is definitely the implication that he's arriving at. Who's his audience? If it's not the wealthy English Protestants, who's he talking about?
Oh.
Wait, what are you getting? What's?
She got to level 15, she wanted everyone to know.
Oh, jeez. Okay. Very nice, very nice.
He's talking about the poor people because the poor people tend to go to America.
Okay, is he telling the poor people not to go to America, though? Is he faulting anyone for making that decision?
You see what it says?
Who do we think he's talking to?
The king.
The king? Okay. Perhaps the king. Except who's the king? Does the king care?
No.
No. The king is King George. He's off in Germany. He doesn't care what's happening in England, no less Ireland. Is Swift talking, though, to somebody who could do something about it? Yeah. He is talking to some very influential English people, but he seems to be addressing the English people who are sympathetic to Ireland's plight, the people who are trying to find a solution to this problem. So these are generally people who don't own land in Ireland. So wealthy, influential English people who haven't bought up all of the land. Because do we think those landowners are going to change? Not unless something makes them. And what is his purpose?
To raise awareness about how bad it is.
To raise awareness. All right. Raise awareness of the situation. And definitely, because it's a satire, what are we doing?
What year was this published?
These guys. But also, Glenn, what did you say? Before attack. Said exposing.
Oh yeah, exposing.
But America's not like this.
So, to expose. And what he's going to expose, Swift, the author, doesn't come out very clearly until one paragraph in this. And give me a moment here because this takes a bit of breath.
Do it.
I can think of no one objection that will possibly be raised against this proposal unless it should be urged that the number of people will be thereby much lessened in the kingdom. This I freely own, and 'twas indeed one principal design in offering it to the world. I desire the reader will observe that I calculate my remedy for this one individual kingdom of Ireland, and for no other that ever was, is, or I think ever can be upon earth. Therefore let no man talk to me of other expedients, of taxing our absentees at 5 shillings a pound, of using neither clothes nor household furniture except what is of our own growth and manufacture, of utterly rejecting the materials and instruments that promote foreign luxury, of curing the expensiveness of pride, vanity, idleness, and gaming in our women, of introducing a vein of parsimony, prudence, and temperance, of learning to love our country, wherein we differ even from Laplanders and the inhabitants of Topinambu, of quitting our animosities and factions, nor acting any longer like the Jews, who were murdering one another at the very moment their city was taken, of being a little cautious not to sell our country and consciences for nothing, of teaching landlords to have at least 1 degree of mercy towards their tenants, lastly, of putting a spirit of honesty, industry, and skill into our shopkeepers, who, if a resolution could be taken now to buy only our native goods, would immediately unite to cheat and exact upon us the price, the measure, and the goodness, nor could ever yet be brought to make one fair proposal of just dealing, though often and earnestly invited to it. What is it that Swift is actually proposing? Swift the author, not Swift the narrator. Stop being so dang crappy to our own country. Holy cow. Here, these are all actual proposals that have been put forth to address the situation in Ireland. What happened to all of them? They all got, they all got shot down. And they got shot down by this group of people who, being, good Christians, say, yes, I want to help the situation in Ireland. But are they willing to help the situation in Ireland if it means that they don't profit as much? Not really. So is Swift actually proposing that we eat the average babies?
No,
No.
to raise awareness.
Raise awareness of the situation, to expose who it is that's been knocking down all of these real proposals, and to again set forth these proposals as something that could work, certainly better than the ridiculous proposal we get here. Does that make sense? Okay. Can I give you one funny story?
Yes.
The first time I read a modest proposal was in my honors English class my sophomore year of high school. And when I read it, I understood that Swift wasn't serious. When I got into class the next day, found out my classmates hadn't quite gotten that. My classmates thought he was serious. And what was worse, they thought it was a good idea.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was a little nervous after that, being, the good, daughter of Irish immigrants. Well, great-granddaughter of Irish immigrants that I was. Yeah. Okay, so we got that. Now, I do have one last thing for us to do, real fast.
That was insane.
So, real quick, modest proposal, thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay, that's mixed. Okay, I'll take that. Okay, so what I have for you here, I posted this under the announcements. It says British Literature 2 survey. If you guys would take that for me real fast. And once you're done with it, the page I really need, I do need your responses. There are several that I marked as mandatory, like you have to fill those out. But I need you guys to fill this out as best you can. And once you're done, you're out of here. Remember, what's due tonight?
Wait, it says you need permission.
It says you need permission. You need to be logged into your MyTCC account. So tonight is the Unit 5 exam. Please make sure you get that in. And tomorrow night, what's due on tomorrow night? I gave you way too long on that. The mock epic or modest proposal.
But if you've done all 10, it doesn't matter.
If you've already done your 10, it doesn't matter. You don't have to do it.
It's due tomorrow.
Yeah, it's due tomorrow night. I will be emailing you guys and bugging you if you don't have the unit exam done tomorrow, though. Because, yeah.
So we don't have class tomorrow?
Something about, oh wait, I have an idea.
Okay.
No, I'm gonna go to my other explore.
All right.